I want to take you to the second one, and we'll just introduce next week so you can at least be reading about it. Turn to chapter 11 of Hebrews. This is where we find Noah. And we're going to look at Noah next week, and after that Abraham. But turn to Hebrews 11:7. I think that Hebrews 11:7 distills down 3 chapters of the Bible into one verse. It distills down Genesis 6, Genesis 7, and Genesis 8 into one verse. And that's the life of Noah. And look at Hebrews 11:7, because if we saw that fathers of the Word, the dads that we cheer for, would be like Job, that are involved prayerfully with their family. Secondly, dads like Noah will be involved not just praying for their family, but secondly, leading their families. Now, this is a lost art, and I'm going to talk about male leadership this morning and just introduce it. And I admire the great men that lead in this church, but I'm talking about across the nation, our world, male leadership is almost extinct. But we need to cheer for dads who lead, fathers of the Word who will be like Noah, who led his family. Look at what Hebrews 11:7 says. By faith, Noah, a lot of stuff in this verse, it's rich, being warned by God about things not yet seen, in reverence, prepared an ark. An ark? You know, you hear the kids' song, Arky, Arky, Arky. Well, I mean, what is an ark when you don't have oceans? What is an ark when it doesn't rain? What is an ark in the middle of flatland? I mean, what a man of faith. Sometimes we don't realize Noah was incredible. But he prepared an ark for the salvation of his household. I don't know if he knew when he built that God specifically let him build that to save his own children's lives out of the whole world. Did you know he got to save, only his family made it out of the world? Do you know that the flood was global? That God killed, God drowned every single human? There were probably nearly or more than 1 billion people on this planet. Last week in Germany, they found a spear in a coal seam from the Mesozoic era. You know, they're kind of, well, they're not sure which era that is, because how did that spear get there? And it's in the USA Today, so they can't hide it and say it's a bunch of those creationist kooks that did that, They found a highly developed, they said, this ape man knew a lot. He cut his spear from the bottom of the tree where it was strongest. And there it is. It was in the coal seam, right with all those prehistoric ferns and fronds and everything else that's in that coal. And those Germans, I guess, aren't smart enough to know about evolution, so they just told everybody about it, and put it on the USA Today on the world news. Well, those people all drowned that are in the coal seam. He condemned the world, verse 7 says, the whole world. Did you know that it was Noah against the whole world? Noah contra mundum. He was against everyone. And he became an heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. Let me just read to you about Noah. And this is what we're going to study next week, and then we'll close this morning. We need to cheer dads who lead like Noah. Number one, Noah was a leader because he believed God. It says by faith. And we'll go into these in depth next time. Noah was a leader, secondly, because he stayed in touch with God. He was warned about stuff. He didn't just start with God, he stayed with God. If I could say that 20 times, I would. Don't just start good. Stay with God. He stayed in touch. God warned him. He had spiritual perception. We would call it in the New Testament. He walked in the Spirit. If you're a cell phone person, he stayed in his home area all the time. He could have unlimited calling. He was just in touch with God all the time. And God was in touch with him. Thirdly, he was a leader because he obeyed God. Don't pile up a lot of knowledge without a lot of obedience. God says, if you love me, obey me. And he was a leader because he loved God so much that he did obey him. He did what God said. Fourthly, look at verse 7. Noah was a leader because he had the respect of his family. He saved his house. Do you know how many dads in the Old Testament, their kids thought they were crazy? One in particular, Lot. You know what it says in Genesis 19? We'll look in depth at Lot and his failures next week. You know what it says? When he warned his family about a similar impending judgment, they said, you're drunk. You're drunk. You're crazy. Genesis 19:14. You're out of your mind. They weren't following him. They didn't listen to him. But Noah was a leader because he had the respect of his family. And they believed him so much they followed him when the whole world wasn't. Have you ever heard, but nobody else is doing that? Dad. But you know what? If you have the respect of your family, even if they question, they will still follow. And Noah was a leader because he had the respect of his family. Fifthly, we're going to see next week, Noah was a leader because he called sin what it was. You know what it says? He condemned the whole world. You know what? If everyone else in the whole block, or if everyone else in the whole city, or if everybody else in the whole church is doing something, it doesn't make it right. And a father is willing to stand and call sin what it is, and he condemned the world, and sinners, he pointed out, and he said, we, our house, will not do that because God said so. Now that's a leader. Now, it doesn't count if you make up your own rules. They have to be God's rules. And a lot of Christian parents have screwed the screw so tight and have put the clampers on and have done a Mark Twain. You know Mark Twain, you know what his parenting instruction was? Buy a barrel when they're 12. When they're 13, put them in and nail the lid down and let them out when they're 19. And that's what some Christian families do. They just put them in a barrel, have a little peephole, and they feed them and let them breathe through there. That's not God's will. But it's also not His will that they play in the gutter and the stench of the world. And Noah was a leader because he called sin what it was. And Noah was a leader because he trusted God's salvation. It says he was an heir of righteousness. And his kids saw it. Well, we're going to study that in depth and look at all the verses behind that.